Okay, I don't know. General just concept to this letter, I don't know exactly, I'm not sure why they would put it in your book either. Anyways, but this letter that you read is obviously someone was dealing with a problem where someone was trying to restrain him from doing what he was being asked to do by the Rebbe. They seem to have had an organization, an institution, and someone was fighting the institution, whatever capacity they were fighting it, whether it was they were trying to defer people from going away from there, whatever it was, or they were trying to undermine it in any way. And generally, going back to the time of the Alter Rebbe already, even time of the Baal Shem Tov and time of the Maggid, there were a lot of people who came and had all sorts of things to say to the Chassidim about what would to try to undermine their message, and always they were taught, the Chassidim always followed the rule that says, don't deal with evil. There's a lot. It's a theme that you read a lot in the Rebbe's letters. Is that when a person is dealing with things that are trying to pull a person down emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is, the Rebbe's general process was that don't deal with it. Don't argue with it. Don't discuss with it. You do the right thing. We deal in light. Anan. Palina the Yamamanan. We are people who deal with light. That's our job. And we don't deal with someone wants to make darkness, let them do their thing. But if you make light, that will be the thing. So that was telling him we have to do that. And just like in the past, anybody who started up, they always failed. And if you follow the way that the Rebbe wants, you'll always be successful eventually. So the same thing in the past, the same will be in the future. And people who fight, the Rebbe says, so Hashem, may be the will of Hashem, that they should see their ways in which they're wrong. And they're going to come, there's some very sharp lines there. I don't know if they had it in the Russian one. Anyways, that's what you were asking. The Rebbe says that now we find ourselves right between the days of Yud, the 10th day of Kislev, and the 19th day of Kislev. The 10th day of Kislev was the day that the second Chabad Rebbe was freed from prison, and the 19th day of Kislev was the day that the first Chabad Rebbe was freed from prison. So the 14th day of Kislev is right in between. So the Rebbe says we know the ruling of the Bez and Shamayla. This was during the time that the Alter Rebbe, that the first Chabad Rebbe was in jail. So he was visited at one point by his teacher, and his teacher came with his teacher, the Baal Shem Tov. And they told him that in heaven there was a decree, and that's why you put into prison. And so the story everybody knows. And at that point he asked, should I stop? And they said to him, no. So he said, well, but they told him that in heaven, from heaven, you should know that Yad Chassidim al Yena, that the Chassidim will eventually come out on top. And so therefore, you don't have to worry about it. Eventually they're going to come, and we're going to do what we're supposed to do to spread the Torah of Chassidus, to spread the teaching of Chassidus. So then eventually you're going to come out on top, and we're going to be successful. The Rebbe is referring back to this message of this person that he's saying that he's struggling. I was telling him back, don't worry, you're struggling now, you think you're struggling, but you should know that eventually it's going to come back, eventually it's going to be there, and it's going to be in the proper way, and you're going to get and accomplish that what you're supposed to accomplish. That is the letter that you read. So I want to start off with a big l'chaim, because truth is, I really should ask forgiveness from Hashem and forgiveness from Eliezer, because when he asked me to give the class, we were getting on an airplane. And I said, whatever, I don't know, whatever, fine. I said, listen, I normally on Wednesday night, I give a class, I teach. We started a class Wednesday night to teach a maamarim, to teach a Chassidic discourse. Pure, whatever it is, just what it is. I said, it's not connected to the Parashat necessarily. And he said, will you be able to connect to the Parashat? I said, not really, I'll try, whatever. And as I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't really have a way to connect to the Parashat. I told him I will, but you should know before we start, I have no intention of connecting it to the Parashat. If somehow it comes to me at the end how to connect it to the Parashat, I will. And if not, then those who came for a Parashat class will forgive me, and hopefully Ezra will forgive me and ask me to come back again anyways another time. Again, Zev is not here, so it's only forgiving people here tonight.
Thanks, Hesky, for stepping in and taking care of his readiness to take care of the class.
But today, tomorrow, yesterday, Wednesday, Thursday is very, very special days on the Chabad calendar. Yeah. Why are these special days in the Chabad calendar? The special days in the Chabad calendar, you heard many times, I'm sure, that on the 10th day of the month of Shvat in the year 1950, the 6th Chabad Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, passed away. A lot of very, very interesting stories connected to it, but for another time, not for now. And for 1 year, more or less, there was nobody who was clearly leading, so to say, leading the pact. And then it was the 10th day of Shvat of 1951, so exactly 1 year later, when they were commemorating the yard site of the previous Rebbe. One of the ways which showed that someone accepted upon themselves to be the Rebbe was that they would start teaching Chassidus. They would start saying new Chassidic discourses. And generally the reason is, I don't know 100%, what I'm about to say is true, but this is my understanding, so if I'm wrong, God Almighty forgive me. Because to teach Torah, anybody could learn Torah, come up with an innovative thought, and teach it. But Chassidus is a revelation of godliness. And to reveal godliness, it's a new thing that's not there. You need to be in the position of a Rebbe. So, although of course a person who's a Rebbe is born that way, it's not something that comes to them later, it's the way they're born. But when they're willing to openly reveal godliness, that's their way of symbolically telling the crowd, I am willing to be your Rebbe. Because what is the definition of the word Rebbe? So there's many different ways of saying this. I'll just say it in the simplest way because we don't have all day. So just simply, and again, there's more to it and there's a lot of levels, but it's not the point of the class, so we're just going to take it in a very simple way. And the word Rebbe comes from is Rosh B'nai Yisrael, means he's the head, the leader of the Jewish people. What does that mean? Like the head tells the body how to behave, the head gives the body and keeps the body balanced and gives everything in the body what it needs. So too, a Rebbe is someone who takes the Jewish people and he gives them, not a teacher, a teacher is something else, and that's the point, is that it's not a teacher. A teacher, anybody can be a teacher. You see, I'm sitting over here and teaching, right? Okay, I'm not a Rebbe, I'm just a teacher. No, see, this is where the Russians have the word Rebbe wrong. But yeah, but theoretically, yeah.
Hold on.
But
also, then let's just, so in order to become Rebbe, you need to go through the certain exams.
When you say Rebbe, what do you mean? You mean teacher.
Yes.
In English, we call it a rabbi.
No?
There's a rabbi and the Rebbe, and they're not identical.
Rabbi.
Okay. And Russians have rabbi and Rebbe mixed up.
So basically, they say that rabbi is a leader of generation, and rabbi is a people who.
Yes. Yeah. But what? Yes. So let me just explain it exactly. Let me just say it in a little bit more of a with a little bit more color to it.
Is only
Civil
one.
way.
Yeah. What?
Civil way.
No, not civil way. Just with a better understanding. So those you're saying it after understanding it. So you wrap it up in one sentence. But if you don't have the knowledge that comes behind the sentence, then the sentence doesn't have a good meaning. So I'm gonna try to say what's behind the sentence that you said. There's different things that a person has to teach. There's a rabbi who teaches Talmud. There's a rabbi who teaches law. They're both rabbis. A person who could, if you have a question if the chicken is kosher or not kosher, you go to the rabbi, and the rabbi will tell you the law says A, B, C, and therefore the chicken is kosher, therefore the chicken is not kosher. And it sounds very good. And it's a rabbi of a shul. He's a rabbi, he could give sermons, he could teach a lot of Torah. You have a rabbi who can't, you have a teacher who teaches in schools. He could teach you Talmud. He could teach you a lot of interesting things. But what he can't teach you is if you come to him and ask him if the chicken's kosher, he doesn't know. Why? He's a rabbi. He learned a lot of Torah, and he probably knows because it's a different style of learning. It's a different job, so he focuses on different things. He learns Talmud. He could tell you a lot about the Talmud. But if the chicken's kosher, it's not his department. Those are rabbis. Different fields of rabbis. One's a teacher rabbi in a school. One's a rabbi in a community telling people how if their chicken is kosher, what they could do on Shabbos. And then there's a Rebbe. A Rebbe is not here. Could he theoretically tell you the teach the Talmud? Of course he could teach you the Talmud. Could he tell you if the chicken's kosher? I'm sure he could tell you if the chicken's kosher. But what defines him, or what differentiates him from the rest, is that he also could give not just spiritual guidance, but also literally connect you, help you get connected to your own spiritual soul. It was once a group of students, of college students, who came to the Rebbe for a private audience, right? And so at the end, they were there and they had their conversation. And then one of the students turned to the Rebbe and said, and I hope I have the story in my head correct. So he said to him, so what's a Rebbe? Right? The same question, what's a Rebbe? So the Rebbe said that every Jew has a soul in their body. And the soul, it says in the Talmud, it says in many places, the soul is ner havaya nishmas adam. The candle of God is the soul of man. The soul of man is a candle, right? There's the soul of man is a candle. So what's it? So you have someone has to light it up. So he said, the Rebbe will strike the match, and the Rebbe could hand it to you and help you light your candle. That's not just telling you. That's not the definition of someone who gets you excited. You know, sometimes a person, you come to a class, you come to a good sermon, and the rabbi got you excited about something. That's not lighting your candle. That's if you have a lit candle, so you can get excited. But it is about the point of finding a real connection to God. That comes from a Rebbe, and again, like I said, it's a great thing to conversation to have, but for a different time. So in 1951, the Rebbe said his first Chassidic discourse, and it was actually what happened was in 1943, 45, when the previous Rebbe was already in America. He had a certain sickness, but on top of his sickness, he was also beaten ruthlessly by the communists while he was in prison. They beat him ruthlessly, and later on in his life, a lot of things came out in him from that. And one of the things that came out was that he lost his ability to speak. I mean, he was able to talk, but it was almost impossible to understand him. And so instead of writing down, instead of teaching Chassidus, instead of this, what he would do is he would write. They would take old Chassidic discourses that he had written earlier on. They would rework them, and he would edit them, and so on and so forth. And so he had given out for the 10th day of Shvat of 1950, which fell out on a Shabbos. He could sit at a table too. All right, be busy. Okay, we won't hold it against you, Joshi. And so he gave out a Chassidic discourse. What was the purpose? Why did he give it a Chassidic discourse? Because it was the passing of his grandmother. But it so happens to be that Shabbos in the morning he passed away himself. He was nostalgic because he returned his soul to his maker. And so the next year, when the Rebbe set up Chassidic discourse, the Rebbe explained the first paragraph of that Chassidic discourse that his father-in-law had said. He gave an explanation on just the first paragraph. And then the next year, he explained the second paragraph. And then the third year, the third paragraph, the fourth year, the fourth paragraph. There were 4 Chassidic discourses that came out. It was 4 as a continuous. It was a long, what they call in Hebrew, in Chassidic terminology, a hemshich. So it was 4 Chassidic discourses that was a continuous, like 4 lectures, so to say, that continued based on the previous one, and then finally a conclusion at the end of the 4th one, totaling 20 paragraphs. And so for 20 years, from 1951 till 1970, the Rebbe every year explained 1 paragraph. And what happened in 1971? He went back to the first paragraph and started explaining it in a whole new light. In 1988, the Rebbe's wife, the Rebbe Mushka, right after the 10th day, on the 22nd day of Shvat, she returned her soul to her maker. And after that, more or less, the Rebbe did not say any more new Chassidic discourses. He said maybe 10. So in 1989, and 1990, 1991, and 1992, instead of saying a new Chassidic discourse, the Rebbe edited the Chassidic discourse that was associated from the previous cycle, that was associated with that year's paragraph. And so we come to this year's paragraph, which is paragraph number 616. And before I get into what I wanted to teach you tonight, I want to give 2 prefaces. And before I give any prefaces, I want to make a disclaimer that the concepts that we're going to talk tonight are extremely, extremely deep, and they're only my simple comprehension of them that I'm going to tell you tonight. I could be wrong, but it's my simple understanding of them. I don't have much more than a simple understanding of them. But if I hope I'm not wrong. But if I am, God is very forgiving. I already found out that the crowd is forgiving. But it's my simple understanding. I could be wrong. I could be wrong in what I'm teaching you, but I don't think I am. I mean, I don't think I'm 100% right, but I don't think I'm 100% wrong either. So that's my first disclaimer. The first preface that I want to say is as follows. I want to give an overview, a very general, like just one paragraph that will describe remember, the previous Rebbe gave out 4 Chassidic discourses, continuous 4 lectures. What is the overview of the whole point of the general 4 things? And then we'll zoom in to ours. And that is that the previous Rebbe is talking about that God found himself here in this world. When he created the world, there was godliness wherever you looked in the world. Right? And then says in the Medrash, there were 7 sins that occurred. And with each sin, God, the Shekhinah, God's resting place, he concealed himself, he elevated himself higher and higher and higher and higher and higher, until he went to the 7th heaven. Then came 7 righteous people, and they brought God back down, until Moses built a tabernacle, and now God finally had a resting place here in this world. And then, of course, right away, it went back up, and it came back down, up and down. Says, the mimer, what the previous Rebbe wants from this whole, and my understanding again, but the previous Rebbe is, one of the points of previous Rebbe is the whole Chassidic discourse is to teach us the following. That our job here in this world is obviously to make this world a place where God could rest, that God could dwell, that God could live here in this world, that God could be here in a comfortable way. What does that mean? Just total type point. What does it mean that God could be here in a comfortable place? I mean, why God's not chilling out over here? I mean, God's here anyways. What does it mean that God can be in a comfortable way? What does it mean to be in a comfortable place, right? You can be sitting here in this room with me, and if I do things that you don't like, you might stay here in the room, but you're always, right? Sometimes you're in a room with a bunch of people, and if you look in the corner of your eye, best example, you come to a wedding, right? There's always one relative or one guest who's just uncomfortable. Nobody knows why he's uncomfortable, right? But you could see across the room, you could see that he's there, but he's not interested in being there, right? He's there, but he's not interested. God is here in the world. But if we behave in a way where we're not making him happy to be here, where he's not interested, so he's uncomfortable. What does it mean to make the world a dwelling place for God? Is that wherever you walk in the street and everything you see around you, you notice and you realize that God is there and God is happy to be there because you're behaving in a way as if you're aware that God is there. And that makes the world a dwelling place. So the Rebbe says, and the previous Rebbe says in the Maimer, that it comes to at the end of time, that the Jewish people, he says, were called warriors. And warriors go to battle. Why do warriors go to battle? So there's 2 reasons. One reason warriors go to battle is because the country next door has lots of good natural resources, and you want to have them for yourself. But then you have to say how much is the natural resources that are there, and based on that you say, so I'm going to gain X. So is it worth investing into a battle in order to receive that amount? But then there's another reason that a person goes to battle, and that is that the king sees that there's a area or a country or something that doesn't want him to exist, that hates him, and therefore the king says, you know what? There cannot be someone who hates me, and therefore I'm going to go to battle. How much is the king willing to invest in such a battle? There's no amount. Why is there no amount that the king is willing to invest? Because it's not about gaining something. It's about destroying an enemy. And when it comes to destroying an enemy, there's no money that's too little. That's too much. So what does the king do? So the previous Rebbe says in the Maimer that the king he has these big treasures, and he takes the treasures and he says, let's spend all the money that we have in the treasury. And then the previous Rebbe says, what does he have in the treasury? He has treasures that he never doesn't look at. And then he has treasures from his fathers, from his forefathers. And he has treasures that are so great, he doesn't show them to anybody because they're so precious that nobody could even put their eyes on them. And the previous Rebbe says that treasure is the strength and the treasure that God gives every single Jew to go to this battle. And with these treasures, we could go and we're going to overcome the coming of Mashiach, the final steps, and we're going to go to Mashiach. Okay? That's a very general summary of the maamarim. That's preface number 1. Preface number 2. When we say that God gives us this treasure, what is the definition of the fact that God gives us this treasure? What is it? What is this treasure? So, this treasure is revelation of godliness. Now, we have to understand, what does the words mean, a revelation of godliness? Some people, when they hear a revelation of godliness, they imagine a couple different things. There are some people who imagine they're going to see a miracle like God splitting the Red Sea. It's a revelation of godliness. They're going to see a miracle that there's a person who's so sick they're on their deathbed, and in the blink of an eye they're going to become better. Revelation of godliness. There's some people who think when you say the word revelation of godliness, that they're gonna all of a sudden feel spiritual. They're gonna feel like things like energies, and they're gonna feel. I don't know. I can't imagine what it is, but they feel like there's gonna be some sort of like a kinetic energy that can surround them. But tonight, when we're gonna talk about a revelation of godliness, it's gonna be something way, way different, and perhaps very boring. When I was 19 years old, I learned in a yeshiva in France, right outside of Paris. And we were learning the Chassidic discourse. And the Chassidic discourse was talking about Nekudos, Klolim, Kavim, and Nigulim. Okay? That's general concepts, lines, and circles. And it was trying to explain how you take a concept, and it's a big circle, it's a big concept, and then if you go back to the point of it, eventually you come to a point, and that point really could go a different way. The whole thing flew right over my head. I didn't understand one word. I was going crazy. Teacher was teaching, I was going nuts. I couldn't understand what was the point. What was he trying to? Finally, one day, I came to the teacher and I said, Rebbe Bloom, explain to me something. What's the difference if the point looks like this or if the point looks like that? I said, what's the difference if it's a black point or a red point? What's the difference? Why he's going on for pages trying to describe this point. Is it mean this or maybe it means that? And he's going on and trying to literally, and he was trying to make it, And he looked at me and he said, Chesky, you don't understand something? Let me explain to you something. He says, some mornings you wake up in the morning and you're just happy to do a mitzvah. Sometimes it happens. He says, why? Where did that come from? It's because that morning, whatever it had to do with the maamarim, the point went from red to black, elevated itself. And because that point got elevated, so then all the levels of the layers that continue and then everything that comes down after that, everything got elevated a step up. And because of that, your soul, your neshama that's inside of you, got a little bit zapped because it went to a place that it wasn't there yesterday. And that made you excited to do a mitzvah. In other words, when we're going to talk about revelation of godliness, it's not exciting. It's not a ooh-ha thing. When we're talking about revelation of godliness, it's that inner strength. It's that inner strength that we find ourselves in sometimes coming up to tough places, and we're going to say, wow, that tough thing, how am I overcome it? How am I going to get past something that I don't know where it is? I don't understand how I'm going to get there. And the answer is because inside of you, you're going to have an inner strength of godliness. And that inner strength of godliness, in generations when they had a Beis Hamikdash and they had revealed godliness and they're in a temple, they were able to go and bring sacrifices and they saw godliness with their eyes, you didn't need much to get you through struggles. I always tell the people, when life is good, it's easy to do good things. When life is tough, you need an inner strength to do the right thing. When life is good, it's easy to be committed because life is good. But when life is hard to stay committed, then you need an inner strength. And that darkness of exile that we find ourselves in now We need an inner strength. And the question is, how much inner strength do we have? And the purpose of this, the zoom in to the Chassidic discourse, to this year's chapter, is the previous Rebbe is describing what exactly is this treasure that God has that He gives us. What exactly is this treasure that God has that He gives us? And so, what I want to do tonight is to learn a little bit of what this treasure is. But before I go into what it says in the treasures in this year, we also have to first learn what the treasure was last year's treasure. And this year's treasure is not the same. Because the way Chassidic discourses work is that they start off, and in every paragraph, we try to say it, we try to make it, we try to go up a little bit, higher and deeper and deeper. So he says like this. He says in the maamarim, he says in the Chassidic discourse, he says the following. He quotes a very famous saying from Kabbalah that says that God is Ein Sof, God is no end, and Yesh Boi Maila Adin Ketz, Ulamata Mata Adin Tachtas. He's no end, so he goes up as high as you want, and goes down as low as you want. Because he has no end. So the maamarim asks a question. He says, I don't understand. If he has no end, so then obviously he goes up and down. When you seem to say that he goes up and he goes down, that means there's a place that he goes to that's above and a place that he goes to that's below. But if he has no end, that means he has no definition. In a circle, if I tell you the circle, it's a circle. And then I tell you, so it goes all the way to the end and all the way to the beginning. It's a contradiction because a circle has no end, it has no beginning. If you're Ein Sof, if you're unlimited, if you're everywhere, right? So then what does it mean that you go up and down? You can't go up, you can't go down because there's no up and there's no down. It's everywhere. It's a circle. There's no beginning and there's no end. So I tell you it's a circle and it goes all the way from the beginning to the end. I mean, obviously it goes from the beginning to there is no beginning and there is no end. That's a contradiction. It's two statements that don't work together. So the previous Rebbe explains, most people who teach, and by most I mean all, people who teach, they have some common denominator with their students. Some intellectual common denominator with their students. Not all, most. By most I mean all. By most I mean all. What does that mean, they have a common denominator? It means that they understand things generally the same way. In Chassidus, there's a guy, he's a teacher. He's only found in the books. Maybe he exists, maybe he doesn't. But his intellect of the teacher is light years away from the student. There's no relationship in his intellect to the intellect of the student. So how does he teach the student? So generally, not even if you're light years away, but even if there's a big separation between you and the person you're teaching, before you teach, you want to stop. You want to imagine what does the person that you're teaching knows, and you want to construct your train of thought, whatever it is. Your thought process should be that the student should be able to relate to it. Red dot, exactly. You want to formulate it that it should make sense. You want to put things in order and make things in order that the student should understand. Now, what happens if you're a very, very brilliant teacher? There's a man, he passed away a few years ago. His name was Rebbe Khan. Rebbe Khan was a true genius, and specifically in the teachings of Chassidus. But he was able to teach 15-year-olds. And when the 15-year-olds learned from him, they thought that they understood everything he said. And not only they think that they understood everything he said, they probably did. Because he was a master. He was a master at concealing what wasn't relevant to the student. He was a master at concealing that which he didn't understand. The student should have no idea that he has a question. He was light years more brilliant than any 15-year-old he ever taught. And to teach a 15-year-old, to teach a young person when you're a brilliant man, you don't just have to reconstruct that which you're teaching. you have to extrapolate that which is relevant and relatable to the student, and take away anything that the student is not going to be able to understand. It shouldn't be there, because you'll just confuse him. So you have to remove all the knowledge which is not relevant, which might confuse him, and only give him a small tidbit, that which is relevant to him. And this in Chassidus is called to be mashpia, to give someone something which you have. In Kabbalah, it's called shefa. Kabbalah uses the word shefa. Shefa means that you take something and you hand the person. Now, when you give someone, the student now has a tangible piece of knowledge which previously found himself inside the brain of the teacher, and now it's in the brain of the student. Understand what the teacher has without the teacher giving it to him. Correct. He would never be able to get it. On his own, he would never have any of it. He would never be able to get any of it. A very good teacher has another capability which they could do. And that is, when they want to give over this understanding, this knowledge, they also want that the student should eventually be able to come to understand that which the teacher understands, at least somewhat. In other words, when I give the student, I gave him something on his level, but I don't want him to remain on that level. I want him to be able to find the depth and to be able to go deeper and deeper into it. And what do? That knowledge which I give to him, I word in a very, very, very particular way. That knowledge which I give to him with enough information that he doesn't understand exactly what I gave him. When I was young, I had a friend who was a brilliant kid. He told me there was a certain teacher in yeshiva who everybody used to make fun of him. He used to talk very fast. And if you would ask him a question, he would literally be able to answer you something along the lines of, I'm going to answer that in 3 classes and 4 minutes into the class. How did he know what he was going to say in 3 classes, 4 minutes into the class? So this friend of mine explained to me, I never learned by this guy. He explained to me, he says, very simple. When he teaches, he's a brilliant man, and he words himself. Every word he says in his class is super calculated. He doesn't say any extra words, and he doesn't miss any words, because he knows that he doesn't have time to explain everything to you, because your attention span is so big. But if you record every single word he says exactly as he says it, and then later on you think into what he was saying, and you absolutely take every word that he said for granted, nothing is there for no reason, and you calculate what he said, why he said, when he used this term, when he used that term, you could come to understand things very deeply. And therefore, he could tell you what he's going to say in six lessons, because every word is calculated. And since every word is calculated, he knows exactly when he's going to be holding where at what point, because he knows what he's teaching you for the next 4 months. He already knows every single lesson exactly what point he wants to teach you. Why? Because he's not just giving you something for you to understand. He's giving you a window into his understanding. Yeah, but I want to use the word window. He's giving you a window into what he understands. He's giving you a window to look into what he understands. So he's not really giving you anything. If you just take the words that he said, they sometimes don't look very intellectual. They look weird. They sound funny. But if you take the time to look at what he's giving you, it's a window into what he understands. And in the terms of Chassidus and in the terms of Kabbalah, this is called light. Why is it called light? Because the light, when you see a light, you could know a lot about the bulb. You could know a lot about the bulb, but you have nothing from the bulb. You could know its color, you could know how strong it is, you could know if you're very good, you could probably even figure out what kind of material it is, what it's built out of. You could figure out a lot of information from the light. The more scientific you are, the more you'll understand. You see the light of the sun, you could know a lot about the sun. Nobody's ever been anywhere close to the sun, but we know so much about what's composed inside the sun, what it's made up of, because we have the light of the sun. Do we have anything from the sun? We have nothing from the sun. Nobody's ever seen any of the gases that are found in the sun. Nobody's ever been close to the sun. Nobody's ever been, but we can know why. Because the light gives us a window into the source of the light. This is called earth. What's unique about light is that it has two opposite character traits. Before I go further, I just want to remind you, everything that I'm telling you is based on my understanding of what the Rebbe explained in the year 1966 in Yud Shvat. And this particular thing that I'm saying is based on something from the first Chabad Rebbe. Okay? I might be wrong. This is my understanding of it.
Your perception.
My perception, exactly. This is a window into my light.
Your life.
So now we go. So what are the two opposite character traits that this light has? On one hand, it gives you absolutely nothing. You have nothing from the source of light. Zero. On the other hand, it reveals to you the very essence of who it is. In a minute you'll understand that sometimes the example and the thing don't have to match, but it's like that on purpose. So let me try to rephrase that in different words, in more Kabbalistic terms, which hopefully might sound better than my English words. If you want to reveal who you are without allowing someone else to see you, God wants to reveal Himself. No, nobody could see God. He would just disappear. So what He does is He created something called light. He created something called light, reveals the source of the light. It tells you everything you need to know about the source of the light. It doesn't give you any of the light, but doesn't give you any of the source, but it gives you everything you need to know. But it's also only everything you could know, right? So it gives you everything that you could possibly know and need to know about the source of light. It hands to you. On the other hand, you have no light. There's a very famous story of a Chassid, which the rabbi speaks about very often. His name was Rebbe Futterfass. Rebbe Futterfass was in prison by the communists for various different reasons. Amongst them, but not limited to them, was for forging passports, because there was an agreement between the Russians and the Polacks that anybody who has a Polish passport could go back to Poland. So he went and he forged thousands of Polish passports to send Jews back across out of Russia. And even when he knew that they were looking for him, and he could have easily just made himself his own passport and got himself out, he made one for his wife, he made one for his kids. He sent them to go, and he himself stayed because he said there's more people who I could still forge more passports for. And he sat in prison, he suffered. And his wife sent him a picture one day of his kids. His wife sent him a picture of his kids. He was, wow, he has a picture of his kids. He was so excited. The story goes, a little while later, his wife sent him a package. And the package, there were some, kids here got in the package. And when he got the kids here, he was dancing. He was so excited. One of the other prisoners turned to him and said, Mendel, it's just some hair of your kid. It wasn't. He said, yeah, the picture told me everything about the kid. But the hair is my kid. And it's a whole different level of excitement. A picture of something reveals you everything you could need to know about the thing that you have a picture of. But you don't have the thing. So light has that quality that it goes very, very far. It could tell you, it could go to places where the thing itself can't go. You take a picture, You could send it to a prison camp, and the kid will never have to know what a prison camp is. But in the prison camp, they'll know exactly what the kid looks like. But they won't have the kid. But at the same time, it also gives you the very, very, you're not getting anything. Well, in the picture, you're getting a tangible thing.
No, picture is not tangible. Picture is only
Exactly.
a reflection of whatever.
Exactly, that's what light is.
And the
As far as the source of light, you're not getting any of it. You're not getting any of the again. You'll see in a second. Sometimes it's beautiful that the example and the way it reflects in the concept itself don't match. That's part of the beauty. But right, so the revelation of godliness that comes, the revelation of godliness, the light which comes from godliness, this revelation has the downside. It has the downside, which we call that it goes very, very low, is that it has nothing from the source. It could go and go and go. It has nothing from the source, and therefore it could go really, really low. Everybody could get it. But at the same time, it also has the thing itself. It reflects the thing itself. What does it mean it reflects the thing itself? That means that even parts of the source, even part of the godliness, which by their own can never be revealed, also are part of what the light shows. Because the light reflects everything that's found in its source. In other words, even things which are concealed, because they're supposed to stay concealed. Let's hold on. Let's go back to the guy who's teaching, okay? Let's go back to the teacher for a second.
But we're the reflection of the light.
Correct. Yeah. Let's go back to the teacher. The teacher's teaching, right? And we said that he has a way of giving over information that eventually the student will come to understand on his own. In Gemara, the Gemara, it says that 40 years after you hear something from your teacher, that's when you start really understanding what your teacher was saying. How did you start understanding? Your teacher's not here. Your teacher lives somewhere else. Your teacher's maybe dead. How do all of a sudden you figure it out? Because since the words that he gave you, the information that he gave you was so particular, as you get older and older, you start understanding things, the depth that your teacher taught you, right? And what does that mean? That means that even the secrets that the teacher didn't want to tell you 40 years ago, the truth is that they were there. You just didn't have a way to get to them. But that's a you problem, not a teacher problem. And after 40 years, you eventually could come to understand it the same way your teacher understood it, because now you have that information. But that's not really the truth. Because your teacher only gave you what he thought you'd be able to understand now and in 40 years from now. The teacher is light years away from the student, has a whole nother part of his brain and intellect that he never ever shares with the student. Why not? Because he doesn't think the student's ever going to get to it. He doesn't think the student's ever going to be able to understand it. That is called part of his intellect, which is hidden. It stays hidden. It's not just that it's not revealed today, it will never be revealed. Not today and not in 40 years. That intellect is much greater than the intellect that he gave. When we talk about
That is depression.
what? Depressing? No, it's not. Oh no, that's not true. Because you're about to find out that's the most beautiful thing. Because you understand how deep that intellect is, right?
At the same time, I understand how shallow mine is.
Because you, as a teacher, you're not just like your parsecs. You know what the parsecs away? It's in many thousands of light years. And you're trying to teach us, the layman. But it's beautiful.
But you're not drinking. That's why you don't understand. You know what's beautiful about 40 years from now? If you understand it, it means you were thinking about it for 40 years.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful story of the third Chabad Rebbe. He once walked into a room, and his sons, he had 7 brilliant sons. They were sitting having a conversation, and they were trying to learn something. And they were arguing what it means. And so their father, the most brilliant man of that time, walks in. Not just because he was a Chabad Rebbe, he literally was. He was one of the three most respected rabbis, and he was one of them. They asked him, so what do you think the Talmud means? So right away he gave a long class explaining the Talmud clearly, crystal clear. And then when he finished, he said, I haven't thought about this in 15 years or something. Now, obviously, he learned the Talmud, but to think about it at that depth, for whatever reason, he never had to get involved in the depth for 15 years. And his sons were so impressed with this idea that he was able to give such a clear class, even though he didn't think about it for 15 years. His youngest son, who later became the fourth Chabad Rebbe, said that my father could teach something that he didn't learn in 15 years is big whoops, whatever. I mean, he was a brilliant man. But that he knew for a fact, he didn't lie. He said, I didn't think about it for 15 years. That means he knew about every single thing he thought about in the last 15 years. He had a calculation. He knew exactly what he thought in the last 15 years. And he was able to say with a straight face, I for sure didn't think about this for 15 years. You can't say you didn't think about something for 5 minutes because you don't know what he thought about 4 minutes ago. He knew what he thought about for the last 15 years, every single second. So God Almighty should give us all the strength that we should think about something for 40 years. And we should know what we thought about for the last 40 years. I do want to get to one point, okay? And that is that it seems so depressing that the teacher has some sort of very deep thought that he can't give over to a student. It would be so depressing. The teacher has such a gold mine in his brain that he has no way of handing it over to the student. And in its resemblance in godliness is that there's a part of God that is so hidden that we will never be able to appreciate it. That seems very depressing. You would think that godliness is something here for us. Godliness would be here for us to share, and we'd be able to get the energy from that and get excitement from that. So the Rebbe says, and this is a very powerful thing. The Rebbe says that there's a way the teacher gives it over. And that is when the teacher says a story, where the teacher says an example for something, not an example, a mashal, how you translate mashal, a parable is how you say it in English. There is no seemingly intellect in a story. It's just a story. What's intellectual? It's a story, something happened. X happened. But because it's so nothing, when you want to use a parable, you want to say something that's very hard to understand, you use a parable. Why do you use a parable? Parable, there's no relationship between the intellect and the parable. But because the parable is so mundane, it's so brick and mortar compared to the intellect, you're not trying to explain anything. You're just trying to, slap the result, this result to that result. And this result I can understand because it's brick and mortar. How that works in the deepest things, I don't understand. But it could reflect one another, because the minute I try to make it make sense, that's when you get confused. If I take away any intellect and I just give you the facts, like X, Y, Z, fine, whatever, X, Y, Z, that I get. So I could get the result of the very deep intellect without having any intellectual understanding of what it is at all, because there is nothing intellectual about it. So when you say a story of something that happened, the story that we read in the Chumash, you read a story in the Chumash. We read a story in the Chumash that God told in this week's parsha. That God told Moses, take your stick and put it over the ocean, and the ocean's going to split, and you're going to walk through the sea. Whatever, it's a story. There's nothing intellectual about that. But then you open up a little Chassidus, you open up a little Kabbalah, and all of a sudden you find out that Moshe is Chachma, and his stick is Bina, and there's Alma dis Kassia, and there's Alma dis Galia, and there's different worlds, and the opening up the world is a revelation. It's a whole world out there, deep and it's crazy what goes on in there. But when I read the story, I didn't see anything. What did I saw? I saw a man standing with a stick on top of an ocean. But then you could reveal in it all sorts of secrets, because the story is so brick and mortar. The story is so simple that everybody can understand the story. And then I can start telling you that you should know that there's a world that you see, and then there's a world that's hidden under the water. And obviously, everybody understands that if it's hidden, that means that it's a deeper thing than the thing that you could see. And then I tell you that Moses revealed something very deep, and you understand. Oh, I understand. That makes sense. It's a story. I understand in the story. But the minute I start telling you that Moses revealed something that was deep, you look at me like I'm crazy. But if I tell you Moses split the sea, that makes sense. It makes sense. What makes sense about splitting the sea? Absolutely nothing. But it's a story. I can hear a story. So if I want to reveal to you something very, very deep, something very, very hard to grasp, what do? Put everything away. All the intelligence away. I make it something that you will never understand. And instead I tell you a story. And with a story, it's very easy to eventually, without realizing it, get very deep things, because you're not trying to understand anything, you're just hearing a story. So the Rebbe says that this deep intellect that the rabbi has, that this teacher has, that he wants to give out, but he can't. So what does he do? He tells the students stories. By telling them a story, he gives them intelligence that otherwise they would not be able to receive, because there's nothing there that's able to confuse them. There's nothing there that they could receive or not receive. It's just whatever. It's a story, and inside the story, they may never ever come to understand all the things that are in that story. So let's go back for a second to the maamarim. The previous Rebbe said that we're going to battle, and we get these treasures. We're all soldiers in a war. We're all soldiers in a battle. And being soldiers in a battle means what? It means that we need to have strength. We need to have energies. We need to have revelations of godliness in order to win the battle. And what do we say? The darker it is outside, the more strength you need to stay committed. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, in the time of the temple, it was very simple to be committed, right? And therefore, what kind of strength did they need? What did God have to give them? God gave them a few miracles. They saw godliness. They walked down the street. They saw sacrifices. They saw fires coming down from heaven. Well, that was exciting, and they moved on. But they were able to comprehend that. They were able to understand it. They were able to receive it. It was very, very. It looked on the outside. This is what's very interesting. On the outside, it looks like they got a lot of godliness. But the truth is, they got very little godliness. Why do I say they got very little godliness? Because they only got godliness that they were able to comprehend. But God is much greater than what the human can comprehend. But they didn't need anything more than that to stay committed. They just needed to be able to comprehend what was going on around them. As the world gets darker, just being able what you could comprehend is not going to be enough to get you further, because there's so many other things out there which tell you otherwise than what you understand. You need something which is stronger than just intellect. You need to go deeper than that. You need to get emotional understanding. And as you get darker out there, you need things that are so powerful, that are going to give you such strength, that no matter what it is, it can't make sense to you. Because if it makes sense to you, there'll be someone who will argue it away. It has to be such a revelation of godliness, such a deep concept, that there's no way to give it to you. So how do you get it? How do you get that energy and that strength to be able to go to battle, to fight, and to be committed every morning and every day to do what God wants? How are we going to make the world a place for God to be comfortable in if we don't even have a way to tap into that godliness? The answer is there's two parts. Part number one is understanding that the king doesn't give out the treasures to the soldiers on the front line, because they wouldn't know what to do with it. Who does he give it to? He gives it to the commanders, he gives it to the generals, he gives it to them. And those people, they take it, they value the treasure, they understand what the treasure is, and they go and they give it out to the people according to what they need. So the first thing they'll do is to understand that there's generals. Or, like I like to call them, we have a Rebbe. And then what does the Rebbe do? Instead of trying to just give us intellectual stuff, the Rebbe gives us stories, or more practical words, the Rebbe gives us very actionable things to do. The Rebbe tells us, do this. Every Jew should put on tefillin every day. Period. That's it. Every Jew should learn every day a portion of Chumash and Rashi. Very simple. Why? What's going to be? It doesn't matter. We're dealing over here with simple actions of things to do. Why simple actions of things to do? Because in the simple action, like in the story, the simple action it looks to you like a simple action. But the truth is, just like the story could have inside of it such deep things because it's a story, so it's so easy for you to grasp. In the simple action is where you find the energy, this godliness, this revelation, the strength from God that will take you places you can't go.
Window to the light.
A window into the light. But it's in those actions. It's not in the fact that you could sit and meditate and comprehend and think about it. That's great. But where's the real treasure? The real treasure is in the action commands that we get. We're told, learn Chumash every day with Rashi. We're told, put on tefillin every day. We're told simple action things to do. We see another Jew, you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah with him, do a mitzvah with him. It's a simple action. It's not because if you do this, then you no. Simple act. When we do those actions, then when it comes to our own other parts of our life where we need inner strength, we'll find inner strength from ourselves. Why? Because we did what we're supposed to do. And because we did what we're supposed to do, we brought into our lives a revelation of godliness, which is far beyond what we can even imagine. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Beautiful.